Hey guys, Hook'em Horn 7 here on this not so beautiful Saturday here in Colorado. Not snowing or anything, but we got wind and we got snow the other day. It's just kind of cold. Joined as usual with my partner in crime here, HuskerFan26. Hey buddy, how we doing today?
Oh, we're doing good. Snowing outside, it's cold. So, fantastic.
Yeah, you guys got a lot more weather than we did for sure lately.
Oh, yeah.
Today guys, we kind of just thought we'd real quick touch on that Siebel, whatever his name is, updates or potential updates for the year. Briefly touch on maybe some big games or any upsets that happened at D1A, D1AA. Touch on the D1 National Championship race, kind of who's still got a shot, maybe who's got an outside shot, that kind of thing. And then, as usual, some real life football mixed in at the end. Yeah, we'll give Super Bowl predictions, maybe briefly talk about that. So, kicking us off here, I don't know how many of you have noticed in the forums, in the general GD forums, there's a forum post up there now, development suggestion topic. I started it. It was posted in Slack that the admin for What If Sports, Sebel, he was talking about maybe doing some developments for Gridiron Dynasty in the year 2019. Obviously, it doesn't give any kind of dates. Then he said, feel free to post in the forums if you wanted to start getting some ideas. So threw that out there. So that is out there. We've got a lot of debate. Obviously, a lot of people are pretty pessimistic about it, which I totally understand. We've been told pretty much ever since What If Sports has ever been bought that things would happen, and nothing has ever happened. But at least it's nice to see that he is, giving us something finally, even if there's not a time frame or nothing concrete per se as to what changes would be. Um, it's at least nice that he's posting and doing something on the critical news. So Husker fan, I guess you're fairly new as far as I think this is your first time What If Sports has been bought. You didn't really go through the Fox Sports one, but what do you think? Do you think there's any legitimacy behind this, or do you think it's all just fluff?
I think he's had enough of people complaining, so he threw us a bone saying, hey, there might be some changes coming. So then we start going at each other with our ideas and suggestions, and then, there's less going after him and more going after each other.
That's fair enough.
So
That's kind of the way that post turned out. You got people going back and forth and whatnot. One of the rumors is that recruiting change would come, and based on what you've heard about Hoops Dynasty and how their recruiting is, Sebel had a big part in, orchestrating that change. Do you think that would be good for Gridiron Dynasty or bad based on what you've heard?
uh, well, probably bad in terms of it'll be a new system to get used to. But with anything new, after a while you get used to it and it becomes the norm. I would just think, if anything, just try and maybe incorporate some things like when you are looking at a particular recruit, it says considering multiple or whatever. Just show who those multiples are. Kind of like what you were able to do with Yatza, like trying to incorporate some of those things in there. Just pick the good things from HD, Yatza, and whatever other suggestions people have to try and make recruiting a little bit better. I think that's about it. And maybe a few more playbooks.
Yeah,
Those
play
might help.
playbooks would be good. It's hard to know what's would be a quick fix, kind of, and what would be a hard change because he's kind of looking for quick fixes, and then the recruiting thing. Hoops Dynasty, I just kind of got back into it, and there's parts of it I love and parts of it I absolutely hate, and so I'm kind of with you. Maybe pull some parts from Hoops Dynasty that the community in Hoops Dynasty does like. I mean, you can take their feedback, translate it to GD, and go from there. I don't like how the number of players was reduced for D1. Probably, maybe at other levels. I just was at D1 when all this happened. So lowering the number of recruits, I'm definitely not a fan of that. That would make things a little bit crazy. Um, and I think having camps and being able to recruit and scout by state, I think is huge. I would love to see that kind of thing in Gridiron Dynasty. And like everyone's kind of suggesting, if he could somehow incorporate Yatzer in there so that people could know, just because there's so much going on at D1, it's hard to really know who's battling who, and you get more one-on-one battles, I feel like, than Hoops Dynasty because, with the lower number of recruits on Hoops Dynasty, you got, of course, a guy sitting in Michigan. He's going to have Michigan, Michigan State, and probably Ohio State, maybe Notre Dame on him, like it's guaranteed. People are going to be batting. Plus, they only have, probably a max of 5 scholarships a season, so it's not like a huge deal to know who else they're battling. Whereas in GD, someone with 20 scholarships, it'd be kind of nice to know, are they in 2 battles? Do they have their class locked up, or are they still battling for half of their class, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
But it'll be interesting. I hope the changes are sooner rather than later, but at least it's something from, Sports Hub, at least something related to GD. So I won't complain too much, and we'll see what he does.
yeah. I wouldn't hold my breath because if I were to do that, I think I might end up dead waiting for
Yeah,
changes. But
you're definitely the majority on that one. Let's dive into some games or some teams here, and I'll start out at D1, AA first. Some games that I kind of picked out. I didn't do any games that were played today. I didn't have time to try to kind of dive into it before we did the show. So for me, a couple of big games out there were week 1 when Texas Southern played Charleston Southern, 2 perennial powers here. It was tied at halftime, and then Youngstown, or I'm sorry, wrong game. It was a clean game on both sides. No one had any turnovers. Time of possession was actually pretty balanced. Texas Southern, what a stat that I picked from this that I thought was pretty interesting. At the end of the second half and into the third quarter, they scored 20 unanswered points, and 14 of those came off of special teams touchdowns. So his offense really didn't do anything. I mean, they moved the ball down the field for the 2 field goals, but otherwise it was his special teams that essentially got him the big lead, the 19-point lead that he was able to hold on to and win in that game. I feel like, someone was posting in Slack a lot of special teams touchdowns. I don't notice it for me so much. I don't feel like I get a lot more scoring, but I do feel like against me, I've seen quite a few special teams touchdowns. Next game for me came out of Stephen F. Austin and Texas State. That was in week 9. And this one was it was a pretty good game. Ended up being decided by 5 points. Stephen F. Austin it was tied at half. Stephen F. Austin had to score 24 points in the second half. And Texas State tried to keep it close. They scored late in the fourth quarter, but couldn't get the onside kick and ended up losing by a lot. And they had Texas State had 2 scores within 7 minutes. You kind of like your chances there, but if you're not able to stop them on defense, then you can't do a whole lot. And sometimes those second halves where they just completely flip-flop, they seem to be, I would say, a little more frequent these days. You don't see a game continue to be defensive for an entire game, which I find somewhat strange. I mean, they do happen, but most of the time things kind of open up in one half or the other. And then the last game that I picked out came from the Gateway, and it was Northern Iowa taking on Youngstown State. Game separated by 2 points that Northern Iowa ended up winning. It was tied at half again, another one, 17-17. Youngstown State just, the second half couldn't quite seem to find their rhythm, it seemed. They had 3 field goals out of their 4 scores. And then, Youngstown State, they generated a lot of pressure. They had 8 total sacks, 6 total throwaways. But it was just like when Northern Iowa was completing it, they were completing for big yards. They had a running back with 20 yards per catch. He only had 2 catches, but 20 yards per catch. A wide receiver with 15.7, a running back with 12.5, and a tight end with 14.3. Like, those are some big gains, and those are some big plays that even if you're getting pressure and sacking, it's kind of going to be hard to make up. And I'm assuming that goes hand in hand. He was probably blitzing or bringing extra guys or playing a little more aggressive on defense, and so that left him exposed to, in particularly in this game, the running backs and the tight ends. So interesting game, definitely a close game, huge game. Could have totally changed the landscape for the Gateway had it gone, in Northern Iowa. I guess ultimately it came down to both divisions have only 2 teams, so it ultimately came down to the division game no matter what. But it could have been interesting as far as rankings and all that kind of thing. And then just a couple teams that I noticed, or wanted to talk about briefly was St. Mary's. Definitely off to an interesting start here. Number 4, strong strength of schedule. Their game against Texas State, there was no scores for the entire last 10 minutes of the game, and even then the last score was a kick return touchdown, so it was like the offense has just decided to go completely to the sleep there at the end of the game. St. Mary's did lose that game by 14, and then St. Mary's, another game I kind of liked paid attention to them from them. And actually it was because of what Schooley said in Slack was yesterday when he played Cal Poly. He was down 21-7 into the fourth quarter and scored 29. I think if that's right. Anyway, he scored 29 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. He ended up winning that one by 11. Cal Poly had the ball 4 times in the fourth quarter, and it was 2 3-and-outs and a turnover. So you accompany quick getting rid of the ball quickly and a turnover. I mean, it's easy to see how 29 points can be possible, especially with how potent Schooley has that offense most of the time.
Yeah.
And then just real last real team that I was talking about was Charleston Southern, a team that has 3 losses on the year, but they've got a really good strength of schedule. They played 5 humans. They have 3 losses, but 2 of them were to top 10 teams and by a score. When a team is keeping things by score, it's kind of a, I don't know, not a de facto tie or de facto win or anything like that per se, but it could have been just a simulation thing, could have been whatever, you might have been out game plan, but anytime you're keeping the things within a score, you're in good shape. So even though they have 3 losses, Charleston Southern looks to be like a really good team come playoffs again. Their loss to Sam Houston is a little bit puzzling. That was by 18 points, and Sam Houston has gotten trounced in a couple of games this season, so that's a little bit of a red flag for me. But the fact that he held his own against Furman, who's performed well, and Texas Southern, who's, as you know, always a pretty solid team. Um, I'm not too worried as long as he doesn't have another performance like he did against Sam Houston. He's only got Sims the rest of the way, so he should be 10-3, looking kind of a middle of the road seed there. And I believe that's all I have for D1 AA. Did you have anything you wanted to add, or anyone you looked at?
Well, I remember seeing a tweet from you about your game today, and I want to say congrats. You finally managed to get by Youngstown State and make it to, can we call it a big dance? Even though it's just a conference title game.
Yeah, that was a big win for us. I really happy to finally have gotten it, and so thank you. We only won the division once. Yeah, when that was like my second year, we somehow got lucky over Youngstown State, and so it feels good to finally be back at least into that game. And we'll play Florida International, which will always be a challenge. We're a very top-heavy conference, so any of the humans you play in our conference are going to be tough.
Because you do realize now the pressure is on for you. Last season, you gave them a taste of being in a national championship game. Now you have to get back there and actually win it.
Well, kind of my standard I'm going to shoot for is quarterfinals. I'll be cool with that. So that's where we're sticking, even though we have a top 4 roster on guess quarterfinals, because you might get a matchup that's pretty unfavorable out there. So, but happy to get the win. All
Well,
right, who do you got for D1?
so I have a few games that caught my eye. The first one was Wisconsin and Michigan. Sea break and I think it's Wayne Miller, if I remember correctly,
Yep, at
at
Wisconsin, you're
Wisconsin.
correct. Yep.
And I at halftime they were tied. And then the second half, Wisconsin defense were like, "Yeah, we're gonna give you one touchdown, and that's the end of that." Which I somewhat did not see coming because I play Seabreak every season over in Heisman, and I've played him, for a while now, and I know what's coming, but I am never able to really quite stop it. So here I knew I had an idea what he was going to be doing, and I was surprised to see that Wisconsin were able to stop him. So I might need to send him a side note and maybe get some ideas and some tips on how to get the job done. So I didn't see that coming. Michigan losing to Wisconsin because I think in that game going in, Michigan might have been ranked first or second with one loss, but then they fell out clear all the way to fourth. And then Wisconsin today they played Minnesota, I think, and I think they won that one too. They are looking really really good. Even looking at the stats for the Michigan Wisconsin game, you can see why Wisconsin were able to win this game. They dominated all the way across the board, and I think they came out deserved winners. And they just kept rolling, and they're still rolling. I think they'll put up a good fight in the conference title because I think they might be done. No, I think they still have Michigan State to
Michigan State.
go, which should be an easy win for them, I would think. And
Yeah.
the second game that I don't know. I don't think I can say it threw me for a loop anymore because Ohio State and Roxy, I think they've figured things out. The roster is greatly improved from when he first got there or got back to Ohio State. And then once the roster improved, the game planning has definitely improved a whole lot, and he has been giving the business to Penn State and Notonis, which which takes me back because I remember a while back Notonis when he was at Michigan, he was running things, and then he moved to Penn State. First couple of seasons, he was running the whole world like you would expect at the start of the season. You say, "Oh, Penn State is going to be in the national title. I wonder who they are going to play." So it was always, they were a lock, and then somebody else would show up and get a beat down. But it seems as if Ohio State and Roxy, they figured things out because they were losing at half, but then they turned things around in the second half. And again, when you look at the stats, they dominated even with three fumbles. They still managed to pull out the W, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was just looking at it too. I usually when you have three turnovers, even if you win, you expect it to be close. But I guess if you're gonna put up 600 yards of offense, I mean, you're gonna do pretty well. Wide receiver Ronnie Williams, he completed 20 of 26, two for 342 yards and two touchdowns. That's 17 yards per reception. That's impressive. And not to mention he ran, well enough to keep him off balance.
Yeah, because looking at Ronnie's numbers, like his attributes, Ronnie is a stud. I wish I had Ronnie on my team. Like, that would probably be a waste because I wouldn't know what to do with him. Well, the last game that I had that caught my attention was today, Nebraska and Missouri. At halftime, I was like, you know what? 20-3, it's a wrap, it's over. It's Daryl's first season with the Oscars. He's just getting familiar with the team and the roster and everything else. So, I shouldn't pay attention. But I was like, you know what? I've played Daryl before, and I know he makes great adjustments. Let me just pull up the Wizcast and, see what happens in this one. Then they come out third quarter, put up 16 points, 16 to nothing. Then in the fourth, I think things started going a bit sideways. They only managed to put up 10 to the 17 that Missouri put up. So Missouri almost crapped the bed in that game, but they still managed to pull it off. I was pretty impressed by the comeback that Daryl tried to mount, but still unfortunately managed to come up short.
Yeah, and that pretty tough when you're down 17 points. It's on the edge of kind of not being able to do it. Period. But it was impressive because he took the lead actually in the fourth quarter, 22-20, and then from there on it was, well, I mean, until the end was pretty much just Missouri. So yeah, he tried his darndest and he made it a good effort, but a couple turnovers probably ended up costing him a little bit, and maybe not being able to get a couple breaks here and there. But yeah,
Yeah,
another good one.
yeah, it was definitely a good game. It's one that caught my eye a little bit. And this is not really a game, but a team. I remember, I think a few days ago, I wrote something about Troy State and Macbeth, and he's sitting on 7 at the time of this recording, undefeated. SOS 35. Number one and two also undefeated. SOS 36 and 38 respectively. And he is way back in seventh, and they're up at one and two. I think if for fixes and tweaks, that might be something Sebo might want to look into. Because looking at the differences in their strength of schedule and how far apart with the same record these three teams are, it doesn't really make much sense to me because I think I might have said I have money on them making some noise this year, but actually going to the national title next season because their out of conference schedule looks pretty decent, and I think he might be able to go through that undefeated, and hopefully that will boost his SOS so that he's more towards the sharp end with Texas and Alabama
Yeah,
next for
that
for
should
next.
help because the Sun Belt's pretty loaded. I don't know how the schedule's going to work out. He may not get Army Navy again, but if he does, obviously definitely help. But having five humans on there, one of them being top 25, all of them are top 100, so definitely help him. I mean, we know there's an elite advantage, right? So that's why Alabama, Texas are so far up there. I am surprised Troy State is clear down at number 7 that far. With how close it is. I would have guessed more, maybe 4 or 5. But we'll see. Maybe with some luck, you could get one of those other teams to lose. But I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a shot again this year. I think it's just a built-in negative thing for the Sun Belt. I'd be curious to know if like you had a full Sun Belt and you played, a pretty solid gauntlet all the way through, if even that would be enough to get in over an elite with a one loss or even an undefeated record like that.
All the other guys that will be in the Sunbelt will have to pull their weight a little bit better because they looking at the D1 conference rankings, the Sunbelt is ranked eighth out of 10, so that doesn't really help its cause. So that might be the thing that's hurting him. But and also like you say, the elites they start out ranked out the gate. But I would think like because usually you have Boston College sniffing around, the 15th spot, and then if the coach does well, they move up. I would think that with the roster that he has put together, I would expect them to start out, in the teens at least, and then he wins out. I would expect him to be, ranked at least in the top 10. And like you said, I would have thought he'll be closer to, fourth or fifth, if anything, instead of seventh at the time of recording.
Right. Yeah. I think that's something that he's always going to try. I think, unfortunately, I don't. He's trying to get to that national title to see if he could do it, and he's come close a couple times. But I don't think. I just don't think with elites out there it's even possible. Unfortunately. And speaking of the national title race, kind of looking at these top 5, top 6 or so teams. Top 7. Why not throw Troy State in there? It's still a pretty tight race. I would really say. The top two from the What If Sports rankings are pretty much handed, by an arm and a leg above everybody else. They're both under 1, and the next closest is Connecticut at 3, and they're almost, 4.5 points, which we've seen crazy jumps. I assume at this point Texas and Alabama are going to go undefeated, or at least until the conference championship. Texas just they have Oklahoma tomorrow and A&M, so those are two tough games. Could potentially lose them both. And then Alabama's undefeated, and they finish out with Sims. So he'll finish undefeated. So for me, kind of at this point, I think Michigan with 2 losses, even with the number 1 SOS, I'm pretty sure they're out. I think Notre Dame, if they could win out the rest of the way, actually has a very good shot. UConn obviously has a very good shot. So to me, and UCLA, I guess it looks like they got a shot. They got their number 18 SOS, have 1 loss. They still have USC, so I think if they're able to get past USC, they probably might be around, maybe even as high as number 4, depending on everybody else. So really, to me, it's kind of a 5-team race: Texas, Alabama, UConn, Notre Dame, and UCLA. I don't think Troy, even if they go undefeated, has a shot. I think the mid-major status will keep them out. Michigan with 2 losses, even with the number 1 strength of schedule, I don't think they'll get in. So looking at the rest of this, if Texas slips up, if UConn slips up in their conference championship or so, I didn't look at them to see if they have any more humans, but a 5-team race, 11 games in, that's not too bad, and that's definitely what brings, what makes Wilkinson so great. What are you thinking looking at the top tier there and seeing who might make the national title?
I like how you're trying to put, a positive spin on it and trying to be optimistic,
And we have to have some debate. We can't just say Alabama and Texas are in all the time, right?
expand, the number of teams who have a shot at it. I like that is very good of you. You see, that's why you are in this media business. Good on you. I'm going to be the Debbie Downer, and I'm going to say it's going to come down to Texas and Alabama. Alabama is in no matter what. In my opinion, because like you said, they finish out with Sims, and then I'm sure they'll breeze through the conference title game, and then just sit there and wait to see who they are going to get in Texas. They have some work to get by A&M and Oklahoma, I think, left, and I think Blitz wants to save his season because he's languishing back in 23rd there, and probably wants to get a signature win, a big win for the season under his belt. So he might, try and throw a monkey wrench into Jason Freeman's plans. But I think Alabama, I think they are in a. I expected them their toughest test to have been the LSU game, and let me just pull that up to see how that went. I think it was ended up being an easy win for them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it was a decent margin.
32-17. So that didn't help. And then they played Florida already. That was a 44-23 win. So they've shown that they're able to dominate every other human in the conference. So Bama is in. The only question is who joins them. Texas, there's still some question marks. Yukon, like you said, they are in the right position. They are sniffing around. So there's a chance that they might make it, which is surprising considering they have a redshirt junior and a redshirt freshman quarterbacks, and they still have to get by Rutgers and Paul. And we all know Paul is a great game planner. He has everything sorted out. So they have one big game left. Texas has two. So then that brings into play Notre Dame and UCLA. UCLA, they still have USC. So that is a bit iffy. Whereas with the Irish, I think, let me just pull
They
up
have
the.
both elites, I believe. I just looked. They definitely have. They still have Roxy and Ohio State on there, and they had another human, which I'm guessing is Penn State on there as well.
Yep. So they finish out with they go to Ohio State tonight, and then they finish up with Penn State. So again, that makes things a little bit more difficult for them. So I think it's safe to say that looking at all of those remaining schedules, Troy State might make it, man.
Uh, I mean, so here's what would have to happen. I think what could totally make this thing interesting is if Notre Dame ends up losing to one or both of those elites, UCLA doesn't beat USC, and then if Texas loses, UConn has Rutgers, which is a big one, and I would think would keep them ahead of Troy State. But it makes things interesting. A couple things I want to kind of throw it. Well, a couple things I want to point out was first, you already competed with Alabama once, and I like the way you're just discrediting it, and he's just going to beat you. You could go totally pull off that upset. I mean, Z does get beat once in a while, so don't
Really?
discredit yourself yet. But I think what'll make this really, really interesting is if Texas does lose to Oklahoma or A&M, has a loss. Now, what if Ohio State goes undefeated the rest of the way? I mean, they're 12-0. Sure, their strength of schedule's not real great right now, but having gone through a top Notre Dame team, and I'm assuming they probably already played Penn State at this point, unless they kind
Yep.
of flip flop. So, I mean, it's probably low enough, but an undefeated Ohio State, we know how the game likes to give them favor. I mean, you could see them climb all the way up there too. So, I think there's still a lot to be played for, but the teams on top still have to take care of business. Everyone still has a tough road except for Alabama, a potential loss or two in some cases. So I think there's still a lot to be played for.
Yeah, but it'll be like because right now Ohio State is behind Troy State, and Troy has a better SOS. So if Ohio State ends up going instead of Troy, like given that everything else lines up as we have discussed, that whew,
Oh, and
that'll be
have
a
you
that'll be
refreshed
a
them?
tough
Have you
one.
refreshed the rankings at one?
Yeah, I just
Okay,
refreshed them
yeah,
right
so did
now.
I. I did too. I hadn't done that yet. Nothing moved toward the bottom. Notre Dame fell a little bit. UConn passed Alabama. That SOS could keep Alabama out. I mean, because your Tennessee is a 9, and you go to the conference championship yet, or have you played Florida?
I think Florida is my last game.
Okay, so that's still to be decided on that side. But you're number 9. Florida is 20th. So he hopes it's you anyway, even from a ranking standpoint. That might be enough to keep him in. But if he gets number 20, or maybe might be low teens by that point, Florida. I don't know if that's enough to push him in, especially if UConn goes through Rutgers, and then I think the other side, whoever they get, should be pretty manageable. But I would think that's enough SOS even with a loss, because the SOS is 10 to 47, but the points are actually really close. It's 1.98 to 1.16. So it actually made it a little bit closer. Michigan even gained a little bit too on everybody. So really, according to what his sports rankings are now, I'd say 4-team race. But again, I think Michigan's kind of on the outside looking in no matter what they do at this point.
Yeah, I will just this season might be a season early for Troy, but next season I think they'll need some help with the SOS to actually make a good run and make a case. But then if this season things line up like we talked about and they don't go and Ohio State like goes or somebody with a loss goes instead, that'll be a tough. I will be interested to see what the explanation would be because I've seen across many other worlds that the undefeated team, no matter how far back they are, ends up going even if they have a worse strength of schedule and they have a loss, they might end up there even if they're undefeated but worse strength of schedule in comparison to let's say a one loss team with a stronger strength of schedule. The one loss would cost the team. I'll be interested to see what the explanation would be from GD if
Well,
there
you
is
best
one.
believe if a one or even a two loss, if Michigan somehow climbs in there, does make it, you expect there to be some tickets, and there better be some more than, oh, there's just some random thing in the engine where it's not only on SOS. They better have some legit explanation, but we know we probably won't get that either. That's kind of one of those other things currently with What If Sports that you can just kind of bank on not really getting much assistance on, same as the changes, right?
Yeah.
All right, real quick before we head out, we got the Super Bowl next weekend, not this weekend. This is this Pro Bowl weekend. We got the New England Patriots against the LA Rams. Still adjusting to all that. I know you're a Pats fan, so I mean I know who you're gonna predict. I assume anyway. But do you think it'll be a good game? Do you think it's gonna be a blowout one way or the other? What are you thinking?
I think all the Super Bowls the Pats have been in have been a one possession final score type game. So I think that's the way it's going to go. They will have to try and establish the run early on for the Pats because you're looking at Sue and uh, Donald on the inside, and they're just going to be causing havoc. And then they have Akib and Peters, so you can't really throw it that well. So it'll be tough, and the Rams' offense is explosive enough. Whereas I don't have I haven't had faith in the Pets' defense in a while. So I think safe money is on the good money, smart money on the Rams, but safe money is on the Pats because well, they're the Pats.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. Actually, I obviously just being anti-Patriots, I was kind of hoping for the Chiefs to win just so I could sort of root for both teams. Obviously, I'm going pulling for the Rams, and I think it is a interesting matchup on both fronts because if New England can't run the ball and they have to rely on Brady, like you said, they got it good enough on the back end, and even those linemen are probably good, good enough at messing with the passing game that
Hmm.
might be enough to get Tom Brady off just enough or make him throw it sooner than he wants to. The Patriots are a very good team at timing though and being where they need to be in those wide receivers, the smaller ones they always find their spots. And then you got to always worry about Gronkowski who doesn't have to be open and he'll make a catch for you anyway. So they definitely have the weapons to kind of counter it, which is nice. And then on the flip side, I think, I mean, they already handled the Kansas City offense, which is pretty potent, really well. It's a little different from the Rams' perspective, but I do think that they will actually perform pretty well on defense. I'm pulling for the Rams. I think Rams maybe win this one like 27-24, but I think it's going to be decently scoring, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch either way. Even if the Pats do end up winning and getting another one, I think it's going to be a fun game.
Oh, if the Rams win, I'm telling everybody that I've met Sean McVay and he shook my hand. So I'm ready to coach for one of these NFL teams because it seems as if that's all
Anybody
you
can do
need.
it. Heck, you can get fired from college and apparently now coach in the NFL, right?
Hey, as long as you know Sean McVay, you're good to go.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn too because I like I want as dirty as Sue has been in the NFL. He's a former Nebraska guy. I'd like to see Sue get a ring. The guys they have several Broncos on the Rams team: C.J. Anderson, Akib Talib. I think maybe one more, but a couple guys from the former Broncos that I'm also kind of like, yeah, show them that you guys were still viable players and you went and won a Super Bowl on these teams. But then for the Patriots, they got Rex Burkhead, who I'm kind of like, it'd be sweet to see him get it. So honestly, either way, I'll be happy-ish. I mean, obviously, I'd not like to see the Patriots win another one, but from the sake of Burkhead's standpoint, I would be pretty happy either way this plays out.
Well, I know which way will make me the happiest.
Fair enough. All right, buddy. You got any other final words or anything you want to say?
Uh, hey, Z32, sharing is caring. Just let someone else win, for a change, Just that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, fair enough. He wins across the board these days, doesn't he?
Oh yeah.
And guys, just to kind of keep you in the loop on the future, sorry it was so long in between shows. We tried to get one in earlier, but I had obligations last weekend. And I would like to maybe do kind of what we did earlier with the four of with Jay Hunters and Daryl Jones in our national championship show. I haven't talked to either of them yet about it, but just to maybe give you a heads up, that's what I would kind of like to do. So maybe expect that for our national championship show. That will be our next show is around that time again. Otherwise, guys, have a great Saturday. Thanks for tuning in and have a good one.